Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in Andy Swan. He's a co-founder at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Andy.
Thank you.
All right, so we're talking Airbnb. Stocks had a pretty good run over the last year. Travel still robust out there, Andy. How's Airbnb doing as far as your data goes?
Yeah, we're starting to see signs of hope for Airbnb. You know, a couple months ago, 3 months ago, it was starting to look really dicey. People were really abandoning the platform for a lot of reasons. One of those was the fees that they were charging. It just had become a lot less convenient and a lot less, unique or novel to book at an Airbnb, and people were starting to rethink the fact that they had missed out on the normal hotel experience where you check in, you get your room, everything goes fine, you check out and you leave, and you don't hear from the people again. You don't have to worry about your rating. But LikeFolio data is showing, some improvement for Airbnb. When we look at, web visits, they're down, 4% year over year. But, just a quarter ago, this was close to double digits down. So it's, we're still seeing degradation in the data, but the pace is decelerating, and we like to see that. That tells us that there's a potential for a turnaround, or at least that the company may have stopped the bleeding. And I think that's the first thing that investors want to know is, was this revolt against Airbnb something that would last long term, or would the company step in and correct some of those issues and make things a little better? And it looks like this company that has executed really well since its founding is now executing very well again, and they've found their niche. The international expansion opportunities look extremely robust, and so we are cautiously optimistic that our and Wall Street's pessimistic viewpoint from 3 months ago may have been a little bit early.
Andy, we're getting a bunch of signals, right? Yeah. That maybe travel is still healthy, like the airlines. United just came out with great numbers. Some of the airline demand is hanging in there. It sounds like, from what I've read, that their user experience, they're making improvements. They're being more transparent on the fees. Yes. And all that. It also looks like China is starting to initiate travel and all these things. Here's my question for you. Your year-over-year visits that shows actually lower Airbnb, higher Hilton, do you think that's maybe a business travel? Or is it a return to hotels? What are you seeing there in that data that looks so strong on some of the hotels, less so on Airbnb?
Yeah, well, that's a continuation of what we were seeing over the last 3 to 6 months, and that is, it's both. It's really a consumer shift. It's a consumer shift away from the Airbnb experience and towards the hotel experience. But what's not really visible on these charts is that they looked a lot worse 3 months ago. That was when Airbnb was down 10% and the hotels were up. And so, Airbnb still, we think, definitely losing market share, definitely losing the weekend traveler to hotels, but not at the rate that it was, 3 to 6 months ago, starting to normalize a little bit. And so we think Airbnb still has, a lot of ways to go to regain some trust with customers, but they've started that process and it seems to be working.
Yeah, and I was looking at your other chart, Andy, Airbnb web traffic score versus the stock price. That's always the concern for me. I like looking at your data and comparing it in the correlation to the stock price. We see the stock price is elevated at this point. Now, travel's robust. We all know that. But competition coming into play because the hotels are just off all-time highs, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt. So is competition going to hurt, or is this just, hey, travel's going to remain robust and they haven't seen any cracks yet?
Yeah, so far travel remains robust, and I don't see anything. When we look at the cruise lines, a lot of times cruise lines are the first thing to go because that can be a really expensive trip that you have to plan in advance. But when we look at LikeFolio data around people talking about booking cruises, that's still very strong, which tells us that the weekend getaway isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And internationally, things look pretty good. So I think Airbnb's in a good, it has a nice tailwind, which is carrying the entire industry. You can see that reflected in the stock. It's still got a ways to go with the consumer inside of that niche against hotels, but they're at least making strides. And that wasn't something that we could have said 3 or 6 months ago, and now we're saying it. So I think there's light at the end of the tunnel for Airbnb, but still a long way to go.
Yeah, travel, if it remains robust the way it has, maybe that's a caveat that it's going to keep propelling this stock to the upside. All right, great stuff, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's Andy Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio, breaking down the data on Airbnb. Kevin, asset light model, free cash